Hello, this is Peter Holmes with Capitalism and Why We Need to Get Over It, Part 3. Chapter 6, Arguments for Capitalism. Capitalism is immoral, so its defenders rely on misleading economic arguments to try to justify the system. And here are three of them. First, incentive. We're told that capitalism is the system that best harnesses our main motivation, self-interest. Supposedly, human nature is selfish and greedy. But this argument is the wrong way around. Our values and incentives tend to come from the lives we lead. Capitalism tries to turn our natural concern for ourselves and our families into greed and fear. But selfish individualism is a distortion of our values. Given the chance, it's in our nature and interest to be generous and care for each other. And I'll just break off there for a minute. We survive and progress collectively as individuals. So our progress has come from cooperation. Only collectively can we all flourish equally as individuals. For example, it's in everyone's interest that those who can't or shouldn't work get economic support. Youngsters, the elderly, the disadvantaged, and the sick. Because each of us is or will be in at least two of those categories. To want a comfortable or better life for ourselves and our children is a natural incentive. But to get rich, or just live, at other people's expense is immoral. And that is the driving incentive of the capitalist system. Doing voluntary work, helping the disadvantaged, supporting strangers after a disaster, such things show what we really feel and could achieve if we weren't divided and set against each other by capitalism. Next, innovation. Supposedly, only competition for private profit can produce the innovation needed for economic progress. But this is another argument for capitalism dressed up as a universal truth. Capitalism has produced amazing technological innovations, but the way we innovate and develop capital depends on who makes the decisions, and capitalists can decide in their own interests. They need not take ours into account. For example, we all want excellent, environmentally efficient homes and workplaces. But we can build them only if capitalists find it profitable. And instead of investing to provide clean water and excellent health care for everyone in the world, we get another luxury car and a better cluster bomb. Given the chance, we'd innovate to reduce working time, maximise pay for all of us, and improve our environment. Between us, we have plenty of good ideas, but we don't decide how to change things. And here are some aspects of this. First, efficiency. Supposedly, capitalism is the system that most efficiently uses our labour and nature's resources. So we have to supposedly to accept economic inequality as a necessary evil if we want the benefits of economic growth. But it's precisely because capitalism creates and depends on economic inequality that it's economically inefficient. Capitalism concentrates wealth in the hands of self-interested people whose competition with each other means they have to keep our wages as low as possible. And the system depends on our having to sell our labour, because we don't own or control raw materials and capital. Our relative and for some extreme, poverty, means we are individually and so collectively less creative and productive than we could be. Capitalist efficiency is not the same as economic efficiency. Capitalist production is socially inefficient for a number of reasons as follows. And here are just some reasons why that's the case. First of all, to do with choice. We may want a choice of new and better products and services, and our choices would organise production efficiently if we all had the same wealth and if we all chose what to produce. Capitalism often wastes our labour and resources on destructive or frivolous production. Take weapons and embossed toilet paper as examples. Some people are rich enough to buy weapons or embossed toilet paper. But it isn't socially efficient for us to produce them, and we wouldn't probably choose them as priorities. Freedom of choice is good, but what counts is who chooses the sort of choices we can have. Next, waste and obsolescence. It would be economically and environmentally efficient for us to produce durable goods that we can easily repair and upgrade. But capitalists want us to throw them away and buy more to maintain their profits. Waste dumps testify to the inefficiency. Some manufacturers even design products to become quickly redundant. Planned obsolescence like this is obviously economically wasteful. Next, incompatibility. Social production would be much more efficient if many specifications and parts were standardized, but capitalists often vary them to create and maintain monopoly profits. Next, artificial scarcity. Capitalists sometimes withhold or even destroy products to keep up prices and profits. This may benefit them, but it's economically inefficient for society as a whole. Next, capital waste. Crises often destroy capital which we could still use because capitalists can't employ it profitably. For example, waste land and empty or derelict buildings are socially inefficient. Just look at the state of most of our cities. We have to build on green land instead, so there's an environmental cost as well. Next, competition. Competition duplicates investment and squanders resources on marketing. There's no necessary connection between competition and efficiency. For example, it may be more efficient for two groups to share a scarce resource, such as water, rather than fight each other over it. The context is all important. Globally, we could use our labour and resources much more efficiently if we cooperated and planned production. Capitalists point to the failure of past communist planning. But those societies failed because they weren't democratic or egalitarian. We, workers, weren't in control, so we couldn't decide what to produce. Next, human capital. This disgusting expression refers to the skills and knowledge that make us productive, as though we're walking means of production like animals. But capitalists waste our skills, knowledge and potential when they can't use us profitably. For them, human capital is just as functional and disposable as any other kind. Next, unemployment. Unemployment is endemic in capitalist economies. Apart from the human cost, this wastes sometimes vast amounts of productive labour. It's another example of the difference between capitalist efficiency and economic efficiency. And last, military competition. Most terribly, Capitalist competition for resources and markets leads to wars between capitalist states. For some powerful capitalists, war is economically efficient, periodically destroying capital, buildings and infrastructure, opening investment opportunities for arms and reconstruction companies. War means profits. All this madness is the result of competitive production for private profit. Capital is a good thing, but capitalism is holding us all back. Chapter 7. Social class. In a capitalist society, most of us have to sell our labour to make a living. A minority owns what we produce and lives on the profits from our labour. So, however complicated social organisation may seem, the two main social classes are workers and capitalists. So, to start with, capitalists. Capitalists make all or most of their money from company profits. Most directly own and run companies or own shares in companies. Some of the richest are just money lenders and traders. But there's a pecking order, with small employers at the bottom. And the nearer the bottom, the harder the battle to make a profit. Small employers often have to work alongside their employees, and they tend not to think of themselves as capitalists. They're often at the mercy of money lenders, such as banks owned by big capitalists. But small employers are often the most fervent supporters of this dog-eat-dog system. Arguably, they are the backbone of the capitalist social class. Capitalists deny they constitute a ruling class. But social power is the ability to make people do what you want. And capitalists can make us support and enrich them for the whole of our working lives. What greater power could any ruling class have? As part of their denial, they don't like to call themselves capitalists. They prefer shareholders or investors. The more aggressive production capitalists call themselves entrepreneurs, which means people with enterprise. So presumably the rest just unenterprisingly make money. Most absurdly, some capitalists call themselves wealth creators, though they create nothing but just own what we produce. Next, the middle class. The middle class runs society for capitalists. More or less willingly, and for more, though often little more, pay, they maintain social cohesion, which means business as usual. That's why a strong middle class is considered a good sign in a country's capitalist development. The two main middle class groups are managers and professionals. Managers organise production and discipline us at work. They're paid according to how much money they make for capitalists, with chief executives on enormous salaries at the top of the pecking order. Professionals like lawyers and accountants organise capitalist competition. Teachers and doctors make and keep us productive. Politicians and civil servants keep the show on the road, and so on. Though it doesn't involve production for private profit, most state employment mirrors the hierarchy and inequality of society in general. And the self-employed fit more or less insecurely in the class system. So the middle class has a practical function for capitalists. But apart from that, the very idea of a middle class is important to them for several reasons. By blurring the social division between us and our rulers, a middle class implies a natural hierarchy. They must be cleverer or harder working, which is why they've risen. And that means our rulers must be the cleverest and hardest working of all, the aristocrats in a meritocracy. To be middle class is not to be working class. But most middle class people are wage workers like the rest of us. A salary just sounds superior. The top of the middle class pecking order blends with rich capitalists, but they're a tiny minority. To be middle class is also not to be ruling class. So middle class people can deny responsibility for capitalism. Some do useful work, often patching up the damage capitalism causes, and some want reform. But the well-off generally have little interest in ending the inequality that causes all the damage. Our rulers rely on middle-class complacency and indifference to relative poverty. And last, the poor. The idea of the poor is useful for any ruling class. What matters is that they're not us. The poor are always other people. The aim is to make the rest of us, in decent, hard-working families, feel superior. And the divisive idea of an underclass is designed to reinforce this. Our rulers emphasize the difference between relative and absolute poverty. Next, they impress us with promises to end absolute poverty, which they define at some ridiculously low level. Then, any of us living above that level aren't really poor at all. It's a fantastic con. The message is that relative poverty is inevitable, just like its flip side, relative wealth. To question that would be to question capitalism and the wealth and power of capitalists, which we must not be allowed to do. Instead, we're encouraged to think poverty is inevitable and probably self-inflicted. Campaigns to make poverty history show how most of us want to change things. But our rulers need to distract us from asking the real question: why is there poverty of any kind, relative or absolute? Next, class. What class? There are two common reactions to the charge that capitalist society is class divided. One is to deny it, the other to deny that it matters. Deniers argue, bizarrely, that ours is a classless society because anyone can become a rich capitalist. Or, equally bizarrely, we're told that we're all middle class now, unless we're in the underclass, of course. So, who's in charge? And who's doing all the work? And why are there such extremes of wealth and poverty? The response to such stupidity is, open your eyes and look around you. But the standard conservative argument is that class division and inequality don't matter. Instead, what matters is social cohesion, class collaboration, in the national interest, and so on. The dream is of the rich but generous man in his castle, the poor man at his gate, each knowing his place and happy in it. The nostalgic fantasy of countless books, plays, films, and TV costume dramas. It's the upstairs, downstairs world of Downton Abbey. Of course, myths and fantasies appeal to something very deep in us. In this case, our longing for peace and prosperity in a supportive community, precisely what capitalist competition and selfish individualism so easily destroy. Chapter 8. Inequality. Most of us oppose social inequality. Everyone deserves an equal chance to flourish, regardless of parentage, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexuality, physical or mental ability, age, religion, or any other difference. Despite continuing cultural and sometimes religious resistance, most of us want social equality. But capitalists' wealth and power depend on inequality. So they try to distract us with the empty promise of equal opportunity. Point is this: wealth in all its forms means opportunity for us and our children. So equal opportunity is impossible in an unequal society, a society of unequal outcomes. Like their predecessors, capitalists want us to believe inequality is natural. Aristocrats lied that they had better blood than serfs, and slave owners lied that slaves were childlike and simple. But it's harder to see through the capitalist version of the lie that inequality is justifiable. We're told now that richer people are more talented or harder working. But this is misleading. Not all talented and hard-working people are rich. So talent and hard work on their own don't explain or justify inequality. And anyway, the argument has absurd implications. If wealth comes from talent and hard work, the relatively poorer we are, the less talented and lazier we must be. And presumably the starving are the least talented and laziest. The idea that under capitalism we get what we deserve in life is a vicious lie. It's an economic system that dictates the wealth we have and what we earn. Under capitalism, there are three reasons for economic inequality: inheritance, ownership of land and capital, and different pay for the work we do. Now, inheritance obviously has nothing to do with talent or hard work. Any idle idiot can inherit wealth, and unjustly acquired wealth doesn't become clean when we leave it to our children. Similarly, there's no virtue in owning land or capital and using it to profit from other people's labour. How clever or hard is it to own shares and earn dividends? Creative and socially useful ideas are good, but the talent capitalism actually rewards is making profits from other people's labour. It isn't having good ideas that makes entrepreneurs rich. It's exploitation and ruthless commercial competition. No doubt, capitalist functionaries like chief executives, corporate lawyers, and city traders work hard. But they get rich because capitalists pay more money to servants who make more money for them. For example, the fact that an orchestral musician, for example, may earn peanuts compared to a stockbroker has nothing to do with their relative talent or skill or how hard they work. City traders on $1 million a year don't work 50 times harder than factory hands, nurses, teachers, sewage workers, firemen, or carers. They aren't more responsible, and their work isn't more important. But isn't some work genuinely more useful and skillful? For example, our lives depend on the surgeon who cuts us open being competent and motivated. But the surgeon can't, or doesn't, make her own knives, maintain the rail track she commutes over, or clean the water she drinks. Our lives depend on the steel, rail and water workers just as much, if not more. Look at what you eat, your home, the very pavement you walk on. Other people made nearly everything you have. There's no such thing as a self-made man or woman. Economic individualism is a capitalist fantasy designed to make us forget. We produce collectively, and no one link in the chain is more important than any other. We need competence and motivation everywhere. All socially useful work is equally important and should be equally rewarded. Like previous systems, capitalism denies us the one equality that underpins all the others: economic equality. And we've lived with inequality for so long that it's hard to challenge it. But suppose everyone had the same income, as high as possible, and the same access to the wealth we collectively produce. The idea may sound ridiculous to you, but why? Wanting to be comfortable or even rich is natural. But wanting to deny others the wealth and opportunities you have would be perverse. Some rich people may be glad that others are poorer, but I doubt they'd admit it in decent company. Most of us don't believe in economic inequality. We just think we're stuck with it, which is what capitalists want us to think. Gordon the lizard said, "Greed is good." No, Gordon, greed is bad. Don't you remember? Share and share alike. That's good. Capitalism fosters greed, fear, and indifference to other people's misery, which so easily corrupts all of us. Okay, thanks. That's the end of this part 3. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, please comment if you'd like to, and I hope to see you for the last part.